It is one of the most pervasive and threatening issues of our time. Well, over the last few years, Kenya has suffered serious climate change effects as floods and droughts become the new normal. Leila Mohammed now brings us the story of Molo Bay, where communities are drowning as the waters of Lake Turkana rise. This is troubled paradise.
The sun rises above Turkana, creating spectacular views from down below. Daybreak means another opportunity for the community here in Molo Bay to catch the breeze and make a living. Boats are the main means of transport here. Its inhabitants use them to and from the mainland, where they access many services essential to their survival, including schools. In Komote village, the morning rush hour routine involves huddling the children together in a boat in the mainland. The county government of Marsabit provides some of those boats, but other private individuals offer transport services across the lake. There are only a few life jackets available, and only the adults wear them. World Vision has since bought life jackets for the children to aid them in their journeys to school.
The support that World Vision is providing includes ensuring that children that have been cut off by flooding and are using boats to access school have access to life jackets, because, as you know, protecting children is important, and giving them life jackets ensures that even as they cross the flooded rivers, at least they are wearing life jackets that can safeguard their safety.
Once the boat hits land, the clear waters show the children's feet as they jump out to touch the ground. The sound of their feet hitting the water is even clearer as they rush to class before the day begins.
We have been facing challenges as per the increase in the volume of water in Lake Turkana, and therefore few challenges we are facing in school is that the transition of these children from home to school and then from school to home. It has been quite challenging because we face a problem with fuel. Parents are forced to pay some amount of money in order to buy fuel for these children to move from home to school.
The rising water levels here is being replicated in other water bodies that lie on the floor of the Rift Valley, a phenomenon that has gotten the attention of the government.
The village was cut off from the mainland. That places us several social amenities. We have a primary school, El Molo Primary School. We have the El Molo Dispensary. And we also have the church, the Catholic Church, around that place. Now, when the village was cut off, it meant that people cannot easily access the place. It now implied that boats should be used to cross over from the mainland to the island now. And this has had an impact on the people socially and economically, because now it has become a problem for children to come to school.
The 20-minute ride is usually quiet and uneventful. This community has since the beginning of time thrived on this movement.
Watu ya Molo tumetoka mbali samani, kama sasa nataka historia. Sisi tumetoka pande hii, pande ya Shangela. Sasa kutoka huko watu akagawanyika mara ngapi? Mara mbili. Wengine nasema sababu sasa shida, kuna chakula, kuna nini. Wengine nasema wacha sisi 20, lakini na Baragoi ameenda kabisa na wengine imerudi. Sasa wale wamerudi ndio sasa sisi hapa hivi.
This community has since the beginning of time thrived on movement. When they settled here, the land stretched out far. But as time passed, they noticed the water was getting closer. And the closer it got, the smaller the land felt.
Alio mambo inaanza kubadilika. Mwisile kitambo ya samani pengine sasa Mungu anajua anapanga mpango yake. Sasa maji ndio yanajaa sai sasa. Hakuna sasa sisi tupile tunafanya nini? Tunatoka.
Before this change of fortunes, the El Molo people thrived on pastoralism and fishing. The villages were also easily accessible.
2019 is when I reported to this sub-county. By then, the El Molo community are living in a place called Komote. In another term, maybe we can say El Molo Bay. It used to be an accessible place from the mainland. Vehicles could take people there, motorbikes. But gradually, there were some changes. The water level began to increase.
But change is the only constant, and these subtle transformations are now so drastic and life-threatening.
Tuko na hospitali shule, tuko pia na mali kidogo, mali ndio hiyo tumefukucha samani huko nje. Watoto ndio wa kila asubuhi tunapeleka, jioni tunarudisha. Wale kidogo wanalala huko boarding, ni sawa. So serikali tu inasaidia kidogo kwa pande mafuta. Sasa zingine sisi pia tunajisaidia panyoi. So mpaka sasa najua sasa tuko na shida kweli habari.
The lake's rhythms have become increasingly unpredictable. The water's rising proximity threatens to strangle them. But despite the gloom that the rising waters bring to this community, a group of these pink birds brings some much-needed brightness here. Once they have filled their bellies, they fly away, some enjoying the sun. The sun here rises to high levels, thus forcing many to conduct their businesses really early or late afternoon. Unlike the birds who move at will, for the children, time is of the essence each day of the week. The government says that while the water levels is a factor keeping them up at night, a new challenge that only was discovered in early January is something they are working day and night to solve.
Still talking about education matters in that area. We realized that the COVID-19 pandemic made some children to drop out of school when the schools reopened early this year on 4th of January. On realization of that, we teamed up. We formed the sub-county school reopening committee, and we came up with a schedule of activities for the enrollment campaign.
Change to 24 hours clock system. Cross?
We've gone round the whole sub-county because by the time schools were opening, 64% of the pupils and students had reported during the first week.
The villagers claim that they feel abandoned in their homes, that with each day they continue to be marooned in the lake's waters.
Sisi kama jamii tulitengwa sana, sio tunasema wakati mwingine sio kwa ubaya, lakini tangu maji erase na sisi wakati ile wa kwanza hii maji ilikuwa imekuja juu hivi, ilikuwa inakuja tu. Kuna season sasa wenyewe walikuwa wanajua kuna season maji na raise, alafu kuna wakati inarudi. Wanasema ikifika wakati sijui kuna nyota inakuja, maji inapanda juu. Wakati hiyo nyota inateremka, kuna maji inateremka. Lakini sasa ajabu, wakati huu maji ilikuja imeraise sana, yani imekuja kama ni abnormal, sio kawaida. Tumekuja maji imetufunga. Sasa sisi tumekuwa kama watu tumewekwa tu, tumetengwa pahali.
The objectives of World Vision as an organization is centered or focused on the welfare of the children, which is the same thing that the government is doing. By extension, we also have another organization, the KDEF, who are working in Kargi zone. They're also doing some good work. We can only succeed if we partner up, because we realize that the government alone cannot accomplish or provide for all the needs that are required for education purposes.
The Ministry of Education has moved some pupils in other parts of the Rift Valley and Lake Victoria blocks whose schools have been submerged by the rising waters of these lakes.
The school starts from here. It goes all the way up to the center of the lake. Then it crosses that way, like that, until there is a tree there. That tree in the middle of water. And then it goes all the way this way, and then the other way around, and then behind this hill. So you see half of the compound, half of the compound of the school is inside the water.
And while the situation here isn't that dire, teachers say it's only a matter of time.
Before we had toilets, enough toilets for girls and boys, and also for teachers. But due to this increase in water, we had all the toilets have been carried away by water. We also have another challenge. We are seeing this water is not decreasing. It is increasing day by day. So we are also worried about the boarding facility for girls, because it's just near water. The water is just next to the boarding facility for girls.
Especially number 11, it tells you how to convert.
We are also working to ensure that we support those families that have been affected by these floods through cash transfers. We are targeting 300 households, but specifically also focusing on the El Molo community to make sure that they have access to cash, because people have lost their livelihoods because of those floods. So we are distributing cash through cash transfers to ensure that they are able at least to put food on the table and use those means to start regaining their livelihoods.
For the community here, the cycle of life never stops, even as the waters of the lake threaten their existence. This mid-morning, young mothers and mothers-to-be are taking their monthly ride to the mainland. Like the children who sing through the journey, the women chatter in low tones while some play with their babies. Since the village became marooned, the journey to pre- and post-natal clinics only happens by boat. The women worry that medical emergencies may not get the urgent response they need in this environment.
Sisi mtu akiwa mgonjwa ama mtoto akiwa mgonjwa ni shida kufika hospitali. Juu hatuna mafuta yenye itatufikisha ama means yenye tutafika huko, itakuwa ni shida kwa sababu hata kama tuko na jahazi na hatuna mafuta ya kuweka, itakuwa tunachelewa kufika hospitali. Kama sasa. Saa hizi karibu ni saa 6, bado tuko na watoto kwa boti, tunataka kwenda kupeleka hospitali kwa sababu ni wagonjwa. Na pia inachelewesha watoto kwa ajili ya masindano hii ya immunization.
For this mother heavy with child, the journey begins at the shores of the lake once she gets off the boat and braves the heat as she walks up to the hills to set off to her journey to the clinic. Back at the village, other residents go ahead with their daily chores. The fishermen are busy laying the fish on the rooftops to dry under the sun. The waters continue to provide sustenance for the families with food that they value. Some say that whilst it was easy to transport the commodity before to some other towns and markets, the situation has changed and since dwindled their fortunes. The main clientele remains the villagers, but with not much income, some are left to consume it at home.
Watoto yangu wasome tuende shule. Maisha mimi nimetoka, mimi sitaki watoto yangu wakae hivyo.
The community fears that if the rising waters are not able to be tamed, their lives and livelihoods are in danger and seek government intervention soon.
Samaki na tangu maji ikue imeraise sasa samaki inapungua. Juu sasa najua wanasema nets hizi zenye tunatumia kwa deep water zinakuja juu. Samaki najua ina float. Haipati sasa kushika manets kama hizi kidogo dogo. Naona sasa tukakuwa sasa tumekuwa tumetengwa Tunaona mpaka hata siku hizi mpaka tunalalamika hata serikali sasa haitujui.
Sijui sasa maji tu yamekuja huku na malisa hapa yote.
Some scientists have gone to the area to explore much more, to get a better understanding and to find solutions.
This is not the first time the lakes has arisen. And you also need to know that in this area of Lake Turkana, the water covered a much wider area than what we witness now. And you see this in the sediments that are now covered by the volcanics. So if you move inland from the lake shore, you will see that there are white clay materials underneath the what you see as tables or something like that. And below it is very fragile materials. Those are lake sediments. So the lake was much wider than what it is now. And then during the tectonic history, that is rifting and volcanism, then the lake was some kind of shrunk by way of being confined to a graben or a low area. And it has remained so, now being fed by mainly the Omo River and the Takwel Kerio River system. Suguta River could also be entering in, but maybe through Lake Logipi and underground into the system. But you will also know that the Omo River itself used actually to flow into the ocean, into the Indian Ocean. But now, because of the volcanism, this has now been confined, and therefore the waters are just being, it's a basin that is just receiving water and not being able to release water. And then there are two dynamics that could be happening. Either we have too much rainfall in the areas of these rivers, and then a lot of water is coming out and less evaporation. That can immediately increase the water resources. And then we also have a problem of possibly tectonic dimensions, but we have not measured the tectonic dimensions to find out whether that is true.
But for the moment, the community soldiers on. Each day they brave the waves and winds and hope for calm to return to a home they have known for decades. Leila Mohammed, NTV.